Welcome to a new season of the hit CV television show, Know Your Neighbor. Did you miss the first season? Check out this list of our Season 1 guests. Thanks to all of those residents. Don't worry if you did miss Season 1. All episodes are on Vibrant on the Life Enrichment announcements page. So without further ado, let's start Season 2 of Know Your Neighbor. Every Wednesday at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock, you'll be able to see Know Your Neighbor on Channel 1390. New episodes will play the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month, and replays will be shown on the first and third Wednesday of the month. Hello, and welcome back to a new episode of Know Your Neighbor, Crowsdale Village's very own resident talk show. I'm your host, Caroline from Life Enrichment. Thank you for tuning in. If you've seen this show before, you know that we believe every resident has a story worth sharing. And as we live in community together, we wanted to create space for those stories to be shared. So we are so excited to be back after taking a hiatus due to a few things going on in the Life Enrichment Department. We've been moving our offices. We moved the residents from Heritage Hall. We had the holidays. We've had a lot going on. We put this show on pause temporarily to also feature the Crowsdale Village Resident Cook-Off. So thanks to everyone who tuned in to that original program on Channel 1390 as well. And that will be back. Don't worry. But we're thrilled to kick off this new season of Know Your Neighbor with resident and friend Mary Bell. Thank you so much for being here today, Miss Bell.
Thank you for inviting me.
I know it took a little arm twisting.
It did.
I'll say to the audience that Miss Bell has been so patient and flexible. We started planning this interview before the hiatus of the show, and I think that she was maybe hoping that I had forgotten.
Yes.
But I did not forget, and here we are. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
So, Mary, you have such an interesting life, and when you were recommended as a Know Your Neighbor guest, yes, that's what the people wanted, there were so many different avenues that we could take with you sharing about your story, past and present, because you've had a lot of really interesting experiences. So for the sake of keeping this interview somewhat organized, knock on wood, we decided to split the conversation up between 3 parts. And who knows if we'll stick to that, but that's what we're going to try. We'll talk about your time working at Liggett and Myers here in Durham, your passion for dogs and your experience in dog shows, and then your work with the Duke Homestead, and anything else that you want to share sprinkled in there as well. So let's jump in. My first question, when we did these interviews in the thick of the pandemic, I would ask people how they were faring in a really challenging time. Now that hopefully the worst is behind us and things are starting to feel a little more normal, what are you most excited about and looking forward to this spring and summer of a little bit more regular life?
Getting out and seeing people, finding clothes in my closet that I haven't worn in almost a year and a half. And we've gotten a little casual in our wardrobe. So just getting out and being around more people.
Just feeling like life is a little bit more normal again.
Right, right.
Yes, me too. Well, we're really glad you're here. We're glad things are opening up. Who knows, maybe another episode of Know Your Neighbor, we could have an auditorium full of audience members.
Yes.
I know you're sad I didn't do that today. Well, let's talk about your time at Liggett and Myers. We know that Durham has a big history in the tobacco industry. Are you from Durham originally? Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Durham. My mother and father were both born and raised in Durham. So I went to Durham City Schools. I graduated from Durham High School. And then I went on to Lewisburg College and took their secretarial program.
So you really are a Durham native.
Oh, yes.
A lot of people here at Crowsdale are transplants to the area, but you are tried and true Durhamite. What was growing up in Durham like? What was your childhood like?
Well, my mother was a housewife. My father owned his plumbing company. There were 3 children. We had one telephone, which is now known as a landline, and we had one black and white TV. So pretty normal, I thought, life growing up.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen Durham change
Oh,
a
yes.
lot over the years. Still a great city.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things were you interested in as a kid? What were you like?
I think pretty normal stuff, nothing specific. I did miss not having a dog in my in the household growing up, so that was one of my goals when I had a home of my own. It was to get a dog, but just normal stuff. I guess I was more of a tomboy, and played building forts in the woods and things like that.
I was going to ask, you read my mind. I was thinking if you were a dog owner as a kid, so it sounds like you weren't, and
Nope.
maybe
Not at all.
I'm sure that was even more exciting than when you did become a dog owner after looking forward to it for so long. So how did you end up at Liggett and Myers after that?
We had a neighbor that worked in the accounting department at Liggett, and he suggested that I apply for a secretarial job at Liggett, so he sort of helped me get an interview. And I got a job so I graduated from Lewisburg College on Sunday, and on Monday morning I went into Liggett and Myers. I was in the distribution and traffic department. I worked there for a number of years, and then they announced that some of the offices in New York City was moving to Durham in the new building that Liggett had built on Roxborough Road, 4100 Roxborough Road. The building's still there. It's some kind of academy today, I think. And so I applied for a job in the brand marketing department, and I got that. And they flew some of us, people that would be working in that department, up to New York City.
Ooh.
My first time on an airplane. Yes.
Oh,
My first Broadway play. It was really mind-boggling.
I'm sure.
So then I worked in the brand marketing department for a number of years. And then I found out that the lady that ran the consumer relations department was retiring. And in the meantime, the office that I was working in moved back to Montvale, New Jersey.
Okay.
And so I applied for the job in consumer relations, and I got that and worked in the or ran the Consumer Relations Department for the next 30 years, till I retired.
That's incredible. So you were in total at Liggett and Myers for over 30 years.
Yeah, 45 years when I retired.
45 years. I hope they had a huge retirement party for you.
They did.
I think you earned it at that
yeah.
point.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's really neat to think of all the different roles that you had within the one company. What sort of things did you do? I mean, starting as a secretary, we can imagine sort of what that role entailed. What were some of the tasks when you worked in marketing and then consumer relations?
We were there to see them create ads. That was very exciting. The ad agencies would come down from New York, and, we were just very exciting things happening.
I'm sure especially, I can imagine that first trip to New York that you described. And coming from Durham and first time on a plane, seeing a Broadway show, I'm sure that felt so exhilarating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was just blew my mind.
I'm sure. Well, you had a few, I would say, mind-blowing experiences working at Liggett. One, you somehow got involved in sort of some investigative work, solving a criminal case. Tell us about that.
Okay, in the Consumer Relations Department, one day in 1988, the phone rang, and it was a detective from the Los Angeles Police Department.
That doesn't happen every day.
No, it doesn't. And a couple were remodeling their home in Venice, California, and when the contractor removed a sidewalk, it was hollow, and there were human remains inside. And also a pocketbook, and in the pocketbook was a package of L&M menthol cigarettes. And he was calling to see if we could tell him or let him know when they were manufactured. So we did some investigating, and he sent me a picture of the package. And as it would happen, that particular design on that package was only used in California from March of 1974 to March of 1975. So that gave them a timeline as to when the package was manufactured and when the body ended up in the sidewalk. And they were able to go back and find out who lived in the house at that time. And the person, they did find him. He unfortunately had been in a serious accident and was brain damaged. They were not able to interview him. He was in a convalescent home. But through, when the concrete was poured, it created a face mask. So they were able to reconstruct what it was a woman, looked like. And a neighbor from that time period came forward, and she actually had a picture of the woman. And they found out her name, and although she had been stabbed before she had been poured in the sidewalk, but they were able to bring, to find out who it was, and I think I know who did it, so that was very exciting.
Yes.
One of the more exciting things that I did.
That sounds like the plot of a movie. I think at the very least they should be making a documentary about that because, I always ask people in these interviews, what was a standout experience from your career? And never before have I imagined a story like that. And it shows how every little detail of what you did had a bigger impact. Like you said, being able to identify the packaging from a 1-year span, that gave the investigators a good timeline. And that was smart of them to think about finding out about the packaging and things like that. I can't imagine what you felt when, like you said, you got the call from the detective. That didn't happen every day, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, after 45 years at Liggett and Myers, I just think that's incredible. We were a big manufacturer
Oh, yeah.
of tobacco, right?
Oh, yes, two major cigarette manufacturing companies in Durham.
Okay. So how do you think that shaped Durham then and now? Do you see any sort of impact that tobacco industry had on Durham in the past, or maybe anything that's shaped how Durham is today?
Well, today there's the Research Triangle Park. There's a lot of more computer, online jobs available. Back when I was in the market for a job, your employers were American Tobacco Company, Liggett and Myers, Duke, Duke Hospital, or whatever. And of course, this leads to the Duke family, who started the American Tobacco Company. And through their philanthropy, they created Duke University, Duke Hospital, Duke Energy. So their philanthropy is still going on today with the Duke Foundation and the Mary Duke Biddle Foundation. So they've put money into Durham with the investing. Washington Duke had a farm on Duke Homestead Road, 2828 Duke Homestead Road, and that is now a state historic site.
Okay.
And he went off to the fight in the Civil War and walked home from Newbern, North Carolina, and to his farmhouse that was there. And that's where his family grew tobacco, and he had a small tobacco factory there. That was the first factory, and then the second factory, and the third factory, which is still there on the property. And then when they got even bigger, they moved to downtown Durham. So American Tobacco Company was the largest tobacco company in the world at one time.
Wow. So American Tobacco Company was run by the Duke family.
Right.
Okay.
And his children, Washington Duke and his sons.
Okay. So this is actually a great segue. You know a lot about the Duke family, and I clearly know very little about the Duke family based on these questions and the education you just gave me. Thank you. So tell me about your involvement with, this is sort of out of order of what I originally said, but we've led here naturally with the Duke Homestead. I know you had a lot of roles at Liggett and Myers, and you've had a lot of roles with Duke Homestead. For those who maybe have just moved in or are new to the area, what is the Duke Homestead and what is your involvement with that?
The Duke Homestead is the ancestral home of the Duke family, who started the American Tobacco Company. And they, I'm blanking out here.
No, you're fine. I've done that so many times in this interview. Don't worry.
Back when I was in consumer relations, I would get other phone calls or letters from people that were asking questions about old packages of cigarettes they had found in a wall or something. So when I went into that department, you couldn't Google on the internet like you can today. So I had to create a portfolio of information to pass along when we had such questions. And I used the Duke Homestead as a resource for my research. It's now a state historic site. There is a tobacco museum on the property. And in 1997, I developed a relationship with the people working there. They asked me to join the advisory board of their support group. And I worked in various roles there and became, at one point, vice president and then president. And for the last 8 years, I've been the treasurer.
It's so neat to me how different sort of facets of your life are interconnected. Like, because of your time at Liggett and Meyer and the research you were doing there that you mentioned, you used the Duke Homestead rather than Google for a lot of that historic research. That built the relationship with the Duke Homestead, which you then ended up being the president of eventually. That's pretty incredible. I feel like you are a very big deal.
No.
I'm so glad I twisted your arm into doing this conversation, because it's just really interesting, and you sort of embody so many different parts about Durham. And I think that's really cool. Is there like a street named after you or anything?
No.
I think we need to get on that, Miss Bell.
No.
I'll make some phone calls.
No.
So Duke Homestead is a historic site, and people can go and tour and things like that. What else do they do?
We put on events through the year. Of course, 2020, we had to shut down, unfortunately. We have, and we won't have it this year, but maybe next year, we have the Pork Pickles and Peanuts Festival. We have like a barbecue cook-off and a pie contest. And then in August, which we are having this year, our Harvest and Hornworm Festival. The hornworm is the big green worm that eats tobacco leaves. They also eat tomato leaves. And it's just on a Saturday. There are vendors there selling different things. We have the moon pie eating contest.
Ooh.
Big deal. And just a lot of music. We have musicians there playing. There are demonstrations at the house. People on the staff and the volunteers are dressed in period costumes. And one exciting thing we're having coming up August the 14th, and we're sponsoring at the Old Durham Bulls baseball park.
Okay.
A vintage baseball game. We have a group coming down from Cincinnati, Ohio, and they are going to play the Duke Homestead team. We're playing by 1860 rules. No clubs. If you catch the ball on the first bounce, it's an out. And we're selling hamburgers and hot dogs and Cracker Jacks. And we didn't have it last year because of COVID, but this will be our third one we're putting on. And in 2019, we had a group from Duke Forest come, and they all dressed in vintage costumes, like they were going to an old ball game. So I'm hoping that a group from Crowsdale will come. It's $5 admission. It's at 5. It starts at about 5:30, and it's a double hitter.
Oh my gosh.
And it's the old Durham ballpark, not the new one.
Right.
This is the one where they filmed the Durham Bulls movie.
Yes. Okay, I'm glad that we didn't do your interview before, because this is the perfect time to do it so that you can tell us about this event, which I think we definitely need to take a group to. That sounds so fun. So then the money that the homestead earns from these sort of fundraisers then goes back into the community or into Duke Homestead?
It goes into mostly Duke Homestead. We have sometimes the state cuts the budget.
Of course.
And they don't want to paint the house, or we just bought a load of wood to mend the fences. And, there's a lot to keep up a historic site if the state has cut back your funds.
Right. And I think that more people should know about Duke Homestead, because Durham is such a thriving city and is very hip and trendy and has become a destination for a lot of young people to move here to live and work. And speaking for myself and probably for a lot of people in my generation, were not aware of sort of how Durham came to be the place that it is now and the history behind that. So I personally need to take a trip to the homestead, and maybe you can give me a tour.
Okay, let me know. We'll go together.
Yes, that sounds perfect. Well, I don't want to keep you all day, although I could. And you have so many interesting stories to share, but I can't let you go without hearing a little bit about your dogs. When, like I said, it was suggested to have you on the show, they said, you have to ask her about her dogs. And when I went to meet with Mary and Vern at their house, the dogs that they have now are so well behaved. They're so beautiful. And the Bells gave me some tips on my own puppy, who is giving me some trouble, as I'm sure all puppies do. But they were very understanding and supportive and helpful, and things have gotten better with my dog, Ellerby. But how did you become a dog owner the first time? You said growing up, you never had a pet dog and you always wanted one. So when did that finally happen for you?
Okay, when Vern and I got married, a few months after we got married, he was drafted in the Army, and a few months after that, he went to Vietnam. And then after 2 years, he came home. Well, yeah, came home. And we built a house, and the same one that we lived in when we moved here to Crowsdale.
What?
Yeah, 47 years.
Oh my gosh.
And once we had the house, it was time to get a dog.
Of course.
So we had gone to see the movie Patton, and in Patton there is a dog, a white bull terrier. Vern thought that was so cool. I thought it was the ugliest dog I had ever seen. wasn't coming home with me. So someone loaned us a book, and we did some research, and we stayed in the terrier family, and with the white coat, and we picked a West Highland White Terrier, or Westie. Then we had to find one. And we did find one at a pet store in Raleigh, but we knew we weren't supposed to buy a dog from a pet store. We did also find a champion-sired litter in Raleigh.
Okay.
And went to see that litter, and they were just tiny little puppies. And because they were champion sired, the lady wanted them to go to show homes. We'd never even been to a dog show, and I had never even owned a dog. Now, Vern had family pets when he was growing up. So we said thank you very much. She wasn't going to sell a dog to us. So we left her house, and we went back to the pet store, and we bought Wendy. And she changed our life forever. Later on, we, of course, had to enroll her in obedience school.
Of
through the
course.
Durham Kennel Club. She went to puppy class. And we wanted to do all the right things, and we talked with people there, and we ended up joining the Durham Kennel Club, and we're talking to more people and finding out how they're doing things with their dog. So we didn't have a hobby. So this sounded interesting. So the Durham Dog Show came up, and we took Wendy there to have her evaluated by a breeder. And when they stopped laughing, they told us what was wrong with her.
No, nothing.
Yeah, and they said she's a very nice pet. Take her home and love her. And then we said those famous words, do you know anybody that has a show puppy for sale? And they did.
And that's when your life really changed forever.
Yes. A few weeks later, we had two Westies. We had Wendy and Angel. And so we started showing Angel. We didn't know what we were doing. She wasn't happy with what she was doing. And so on down the road, we bred her to a champion. We kept a male out of that litter and showed him, and knew a little bit more about showing by then. And he was our first champion. His name was Theodore.
Theodore.
So our third Westie was our show dog.
Oh, third time's the charm,
Mhm.
right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I just think that's so neat. I love watching the dog shows on TV, and I'm sure a lot goes into preparing
Oh, yeah.
a dog for showing. It's not just the same as, like you said, taking Wendy or taking your old family dog to the show, but there's got to be a lot of planning and preparation.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for someone who may be interested in showing dogs?
Well, I would recommend doing a lot of research. And getting your puppy through someone that actually shows your dog. That way you have a mentor there.
Yes.
Someone that is interested in what you do with the dog and how the dog does, not just someone that is breeding and
Right.
selling dogs.
Right.
Because if you've never done this before, you're going to need a lot of help.
Yes. I think that that is the best advice for anything in life. Do a lot of research and get a mentor.
Right, right.
That is the secret to success in many things, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for doing this with me. I really can't thank you enough. I know you were not thrilled when I first asked, but you have been a wonderful guest, and I appreciate you so much sharing about all of these interesting parts of your life. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything I didn't ask that you wish I had?
Well, you had indicated you were going to ask me about a funny thing
Yes,
that
yes,
happened at the
yes.
dog show. Okay, with Westies or hard-coated terriers, to show them there is a specific type of grooming.
Okay.
You can't take the clippers, you can't take the scissors and shorten the coat. The coat has to be hard and crisp. To do that, it is actually pulled out. I mean, that sounds horrible.
No, it sounds like a lot of work,
Yeah.
is why I was shaking my head.
Vern did the grooming, I did the hand.
Good for Vern.
So a lot of our dogs just lay down on the table, and we would pull the hair out. And you're pulling out dead coat.
Right.
So that you'll get your fresh coat.
Right.
And it's called stripping or plucking.
Okay.
And I was at a dog show in Raleigh, and a lady was going around. She had just gotten a terrier, and she was looking for someone to either groom it for her or teach her how to groom.
Okay, looking for that mentor.
Right, and you know, there's a big crowd around us standing outside the ring, and she came up, and I said, "Oh yes, my husband strips." And there were a lot of giggles.
Vern was probably looking at you like, that is amazing. I'm glad you reminded me of that question because I had not heard that story. And now, next time I see Vern, I'm going to say, I hear you're a stripper.
Right.
So any of you watching this, when you see Vern Bell, say, I hear you strip. Well, like I said, I could talk to you and ask you questions all day, but I know that you might not prefer that. So I will let you go. But thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I know that you've been at Crowsdale for a while, and lots of people might feel like they know you and Vern with your involvement in different committees and things like that. But I think it's always so nice to get to sit down and actually hear more about the stories of people we think we already know.
There are a lot of people like that here at Crowsdale that you just don't know what their background is or what their experiences are.
It's true. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into someone's apartment or cottage who I feel like I know, and then I see pictures that lead to stories of things that you would just never imagine. And I think you're right. It's important to take the time to get under those initial layers and learn more about each other.
Right.
So thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
And-
Thank you. It's been fun. It
Good,
has been
good.
fun.
Oh, success. It's been fun. I didn't think I'd hear that. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Know Your Neighbor. Have a good one.